The broadcast began with a hiss of static, followed by the smug purr of an alien voice that humanity had come to dread. Every screen in the occupied territories flickered to life, on walls, in shattered shop windows, on makeshift projectors in resistance hideouts. The Zaurak Empire never tired of theatrics. Their commander appeared tall and reed-limbed, shimmering with bioluminescent patterns meant to mimic superiority. His four eyes narrowed with leisurely contempt as he replayed scenes of Earth's forces collapsing under the opening assault. Tanks upended like toys, fighter jets spiraling from the sky, infantry scattering beneath gravity, pulses that bent metal like wet clay. He narrated these images with a tone so self-satisfied it felt personal, as if he took pleasure in the sound of humanity breaking. Among the viewers was Lieutenant Rhea Morgan, hidden deep in a mountain bunker with a half-starved resistance squad. Her jaw clenched as the commander ridiculed the bravery of soldiers she had fought beside. She watched a clip of her own unit overwhelmed outside Reykjavik, their thermal gear melting beneath a Zaurak heat lance. She remembered dragging her wounded sergeant across ice that cracked like glass under bombardment. She had survived through grit and rage, two commodities the Zaurak underestimated. Now, as the broadcast gloated over Earth's failures, she felt old fury simmer under her ribs. The commander paused theatrically, raising a long finger. "Your warriors lack imagination," he declared. "You swarm in numbers, yet none of you can hide. Not truly. You are loud even in stillness. You are warm even in shadow. And you are predictable in every climate." He leaned toward the camera, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Even your frozen lands betray you." Rhea shut the display off before the replay could torment her again. Around her, the squad exhaled shakily, as if they had all been holding breath. Private Jean muttered a curse, rubbing frostbitten fingers together. The bunker was cold, too cold, but fuel was scarce, and revealing heat signatures was suicide. Rhea scanned their faces, exhausted, gaunt, but fiercely alive. They were still fighting, still human. Across the room, Commander Hale emerged from a side tunnel, snow dusting his shoulders. He carried a metal case sealed with biometric locks. His face was a map of weary determination, marked by scars earned long before the occupation. Hale had once commanded a special operations regiment. Now he led a handful of survivors and carried secrets no one else in the bunker fully understood. "They're escalating the mockery," Hale said, setting the case on a table. "That means they're overconfident. And overconfidence is when mistakes get made." His voice was low but steady, and the squad straightened, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Something was about to change. Rhea approached, aware that Hale had been gone for 3 days on a mission he refused to explain. "What did you bring back?" Hale unlocked the case with 2 fingerprints and a retinal scan. The lid opened with a soft hiss, releasing a faint smell of sterile polymer. Inside lay a compact data core wrapped in shock padding. The device pulsed with a slow, icy blue glow, its surface etched with military sigils Rhea recognized from classified development labs. "You're looking at the last surviving module of Project Hailstone," Hale said. "It was created before the fall, built for conditions the Zaurak can't tolerate." The squad exchanged uneasy glances. Rumors about the classified program had circulated like ghost stories. An impossible weapon, a super soldier, a suicide unit, or maybe nothing at all. No one knew the truth. The Zaurak dismissed the rumors entirely, calling them human desperation manifesting as fantasy. But the aliens did not know everything. "What exactly does it do?" Jean asked, leaning forward. Hale closed the case again and sat. The dim lantern light cast sharp shadows beneath his eyes. "It identifies operatives of a unit the Zaurak never learned about," he said. "A unit built for extreme cold, trained to vanish in terrain that kills conventional troops. They were designed to operate beyond sensors, beyond heat signatures, beyond fear." Rhea felt something stir, a memory from early training, when her instructors whispered about silent ghosts who crawled through blizzards without leaving tracks. She had dismissed the stories as myth. The kind soldiers tell to frighten rookies. Now she wasn't sure. Hale continued, voice gaining force. The Hailstone operatives were deployed in the final hours before our defenses collapsed. No one knows how many survived. Maybe none. But this module holds their last coordinates. If even one is alive out there, we need them. The room fell silent except for the distant groan of ice shifting in the mountain's gut. Outside, winter clawed at the world with merciless patience. Rhea felt it press against the bunker's metal walls like a living thing, cold, relentless, ancient. She shivered, not from the chill, but from the sense that the frozen wilderness might be hiding answers long buried. "Where are these coordinates?" she asked. Hale met her gaze. "A valley north of here. Remote. Treacherous. The kind of place no ordinary human survives." "Which is why they would," Rhea murmured. Hale nodded. "We leave at dawn. If the unit still exists, they could tip the balance. They could remind the Zaurak that humans are not predictable. Not warm. Not loud. Not when it matters." Rhea felt purpose ignite inside her, sharp and steady. For the first time in months, hope did not feel childish. Outside, the wind howled across the mountains, an icy promise that something waited in the snow, something forged for the cold and sharpened by silence. And dawn was coming. The climb toward the northern valley began before sunrise, when the world was still slate-gray and brittle with cold. Rhea moved at the front of the small column, her breath thin and crystalline in the numbing air. Commander Hale followed close behind, checking the compass embedded in his wristband every few steps. Jean trudged silently at the rear, watching their tracks vanish almost immediately beneath drifting snow. The storm had not been forecast, but none of them complained. It concealed them better than any camouflage could. What worried Rhea was the growing tension in Hale's posture. He wasn't simply navigating terrain. He was searching for something he feared to find. They reached a ridge overlooking the valley just as the wind shifted, lifting the veil of snow for a brief, stunning moment. Below lay a stretch of frozen river and conifer stands half buried in white. But it wasn't the landscape that froze Rhea's breath. It was the shapes. 8 figures in shaggy, frost-dappled ghillie suits knelt in a semicircle beside a fallen log. They looked carved from winter itself, motionless, faceless, as though they had been waiting for centuries rather than minutes. Rifles rested in their hands with unnatural stillness. Jean whispered, "Are they human?" Hale raised a hand for silence. His eyes sharpened with recognition, but also something resembling fear. "They're Hailstone operatives," he murmured. "Or what's left of them." Rhea studied the figures. Their suits were unlike anything she had seen. Woven fibers that caught the light like hoarfrost, patterns shifting subtly with the wind. They radiated a stillness, so complete it felt less like discipline and more like instinct. Yet none moved, even though they certainly knew they were being watched. That immobility unsettled her. Warriors could be calm, but this seemed beyond emotion, beyond humanity. She descended the ridge carefully, hands visible, making no sudden gestures. "Hale!" and Jean followed. When they were only a few meters away, one of the figures finally stirred. It rose with a fluidity that contradicted its bulk and stepped forward. The face beneath the hood was veiled in charcoal paint, leaving only the faint outline of features. Twin eyes, dark and unblinking, assessed the newcomers with predatory precision. "You followed the beacon," the operative said, voice low and raw from disuse. Hale stepped forward. "Commander Hale, Earth Resistance. We believed you were dead." The operative tilted its head, a gesture that might have been amusement. "Death is relative in the cold." Rhea suppressed a shiver. "How many of you are active?" "We were 12, the operative replied. 8 remain." Hale inhaled sharply. "Your last coordinates were months old. How have you survived without supply lines?" "We adapted." The operative's answer was clipped, as if elaboration were unnecessary. But after a pause, perhaps recognizing their need for understanding, it continued. "The cold shields us. The snow feeds us. The mountains hide us. The Zaurak do not understand winter. That is our advantage." Rhea glanced at Hale, struck by how his confidence seemed to reassemble itself piece by piece in the presence of these spectral warriors. For months he had carried the burden of secrets. Now he stood straighter, as if finally approaching a purpose long deferred. "We need your help," he said. "The Zaurak are tightening their hold. Their new scanners can sweep entire valleys. They're targeting resistance enclaves. If we don't strike back soon, there won't be anyone left to defend." The operative's eyes narrowed. Striking back is not complicated. The question is whether you can withstand what follows. Jean stepped forward, voice steadier than Rhea expected. "We didn't come all this way to hide. We came because humanity needs you." For a moment, silence settled over the valley. Then the operative turned and motioned to the others. The remaining 7 rose with the same eerie synchronicity, forming a loose perimeter around the newcomers. Rhea felt their presence like a pressure in the air, silent, powerful, disciplined. "Walk with us," the lead operative said. "You must understand what we are before you can decide what to awaken." They moved deeper into the valley, weaving through drifts and frozen thickets. Rhea noticed how their steps left almost no imprint, how their bodies emitted no detectable warmth, even at close proximity. The suits were more than camouflage. They were concealment systems that manipulated temperature, light, and acoustics. But the operatives themselves were something else entirely. Their movements carried a predatory elegance, each gesture precise, each breath measured. Rhea wondered what training had shaped them, or what they had sacrificed to endure it. The path led to a natural hollow sheltered by overhanging rock. Within it lay a small cache of equipment marked with human military symbols, half buried in snow. The operative gestured toward it. "This is what remains of our mission. We were deployed to disrupt Zaurak staging lines in the Northern Hemisphere. We succeeded until the primary cities fell. After that, we became excess." Hale shook his head. "Not excess. Not anymore." The operative regarded him for a long moment, then crouched beside the cache, brushing snow from a rugged data pad. "We have gathered intelligence on Zaurak troop movements, energy grids, and supply weaknesses. They're fracturing their attention. Their arrogance blinds them to threats in terrain they despise. If we combine our resources, we can strike a critical blow." Rhea leaned closer. "What kind of blow?" "A dismantling of their command hub in this region," the operative replied. "The cold favors us. Their technology falters in extreme conditions. Their commanders refuse to enter deep winter zones. If we cut off their valley nexus, the surrounding sectors will collapse." Jean exhaled shakily. "That could free half the continent." Hale nodded. "Then we plan for it. Together." The operative studied them, as though weighing human resolve against the cold's indifference. "Finally," it said, "if you choose this path, there is no turning back. The cold will not show mercy." Rhea met the operative's dark gaze. "Neither will we." The operative stood, the faintest hint of approval in its posture. "Then prepare yourselves," it said. "Winter fights with us now." And for the first time since the invasion, Rhea felt the valley breathe, not with menace, but with possibility. The assault began under a sky the color of forged steel, a bitter dawn that offered no warmth and no mercy. Rhea crouched beside a jagged outcrop overlooking the valley nexus, her pulse steady despite the enormity of what they were attempting. Below, the Zaurak command hub pulsed with alien light, a cluster of obsidian towers radiating faint heat into the frozen air. Sentinel drones drifted in lazy orbits, scanning for signatures the winter phantoms had long ago learned to erase. Hale lay beside her, studying the terrain with the quiet intensity of a man who had waited too long for a moment that might cost him everything. Behind them, the 8 operatives blended into the snow so completely that Rhea felt as if she were sitting among spirits rather than soldiers. The lead operative, whom Rhea privately called Frost, moved into a low crouch. "We begin when the wind shifts," Frost murmured. "Their thermal veil dips during cross gusts. For 7 seconds, their sensors blur." Hale checked the wind meter strapped to his wrist. "The window's narrow." "It is enough," Frost replied, "for those willing to trust the cold." Rhea drew in a breath that stung her lungs. She had trained for harsh winters, had fought in snowfields and frozen wastelands, but nothing compared to the sensation of standing beside beings who moved as if winter itself had shaped their bones. She no longer questioned their humanity. She questioned the limitations she had once believed inevitable. The phantoms embodied discipline sharpened into something elemental. A sudden gust rolled across the mountains, carrying a dense plume of powdery snow. Frost rose. Now, they descended the ridge with swift, silent precision. Snow swallowed their footsteps before they fully formed. Rhea followed Frost's lead, mimicking the operatives' rhythm as best she could. Hale and Jean brought up the rear, their movements practiced but undeniably heavier than the phantoms. The valley floor stretched before them, open and deadly. Rhea felt exposure claw at her nerves, but Frost raised a hand, signaling that the sensor veil had already wavered. The phantoms surged forward, a coordinated ripple of motion almost invisible in the stormlight. They fanned out into two groups, weaving between boulders and wind-scoured ridges. Rhea pressed her body low, heart hammering as a drone drifted overhead. For an agonizing second it hovered, its scanners humming, then drifted away, confused by the flurries the phantoms had deliberately stirred. They had predicted even the drone's curiosity. As they neared the first tower, Jean pulled a small disruptor from his pack, fingers trembling. Hale steadied his hand. Slow breaths, he whispered, "You've got this." Jean nodded and crawled toward the tower's base. Rhea watched him anchor the device beneath a structural flange, its anti-resonance field beginning to pulse silently. When activated, it would sever the hub's communication with orbital command, isolating the entire sector. The second phase moved with brutal efficiency. Frost's team infiltrated the tower's perimeter, eliminating sentries with quick, precise shots that left no sound but the faint thump of bodies hitting snow. Rhea provided cover, her rifle sight cutting through the storm. Each squeeze of the trigger sent a controlled surge of focus through her, grounding her purpose. She watched Hale coordinate with the phantoms, his voice calm despite the shifting danger. For the first time since the invasion, he seemed unburdened, his leadership no longer dulled by despair. An explosion cracked across the valley, sharp and crystalline. Jin's disruptor had detonated earlier than expected. The shockwave rippled through the towers, dimming their lights in erratic pulses. Hale swore under his breath. "We need to move. Now." Alarms rose in discordant shrieks. Sentinel drones spun erratically, attempting to recalibrate. Zaurak soldiers poured from the central tower, their armor stiff and awkward in the cold. Frost signaled the phantoms forward. They moved like a collapsing avalanche, silent, unstoppable. Their rifles spat controlled bursts that dropped the aliens before they could orient. Rhea fired at a cluster attempting to flank Frost's position, her shot piercing the lead soldier's visor. The others faltered and used to fighting an enemy they couldn't track. The Zaurak commander emerged from the central spire, taller than the rest, adorned with ceremonial plating that glowed faintly beneath frost. His voice cut through the chaos, full of wounded arrogance. "You insignificant animals. You think the cold will save you." Frost stepped from concealment, snow spiraling off his suit. "The cold does not save," he said. "It judges." The commander lunged, but a phantom rifle cracked, sending him sprawling into the snow. Rhea reached him first, weapon raised. The alien stared up at her, for eyes wide with something she had not expected, fear. "You were not meant to endure this world," he rasped. Rhea leaned close. "You never understood our world." The phantoms planted charges around the nexus, their movements efficient even as the battle raged. Hale gathered the team, ushering them toward higher ground. "We're clear," Frost announced. The charges detonated with a muffled roar, fire erupting through the towers in shimmering columns. The structures collapsed inward, sending shockwaves that rumbled through the frozen earth. The drones fell from the sky, their signals severed. Zaurak forces fled in disarray, their command link obliterated. Rhea watched the destruction, breath trembling with a mixture of awe and relief. The tide had shifted. Not entirely, not permanently, but undeniably. Hale placed a hand on her shoulder. This is the beginning. Frost approached, snow swirling around him like a mantle. The Empire will retaliate. Hard. You must be ready. Rhea met his gaze, feeling the weight of what lay ahead, yet unafraid. We will be. Frost nodded once, then turned toward the mountains where the phantoms already vanished into the storm. And as the wind swept across the shattered valley, Rhea felt, for the first time, that humanity no longer fought alone.